Hello, everybody. Welcome to Totally Tabled. My name is Shaggy, and today I'm back with another what if scenario. About 7 months ago, I made a video asking, what if I could only own 10 games total for the rest of my life? Check that list out if you haven't. This time around, we've entered a different dystopian future where some evil board game dictator has decreed you may only own one game from each year. So that means only one game published in 2023, only one game published in 2022, and so on. Now, let's go over the fine print. I don't want to concern myself with, each different edition and reprint and remake. So part of the deal is I can upgrade my games with new editions and sequels, expansions, remakes, etc., as long as I have the original. So, in order to keep this list reasonable, I figured we'd start at an incredibly important year, 2006. Prior to this, the choices are pretty easy for me and mostly just involve Knizia games. So, let me just give a quick rundown here. So, 1995, I would get High Society. 1996, I don't know. 1997, Tigris and Euphrates. 98, Samurai. 99, Ra. 2000, Carcassonne. 2001, Winner Circle, I suppose. 2002, Age of Steam. 2003, probably Alhambra. 2004, definitely Antiquity. That's a fantastic game. And 2005 would be Glory to Rome. Did you get all that? Well, let's forget all of that prehistory. Let's jump right into 2006, and a little game known as Through the Ages came out. Now, here's the thing. I've never played Through the Ages, because we're talking about the original version of Through the Ages here, which was later, I think in 2015, upgraded to Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization. And that's the game that I have played, and spoiler alert, that's the game that is my number one game of all time. But Through the Ages is just a classic civilization building game that eliminates a board or any kind of dudes on the map and is just all about cards. Card drafting. You have this massive river of cards, maybe the largest river of cards in any drafting game that I've ever played, and you're using action points to take those cards into your hand, play the cards into your tableau. You have cards for building wonders that will give you special abilities. You have military units that increase your power. You have all sorts of different production buildings, technologies. And it's a game all about spinning plates, trying to produce enough food to grow your civilization, generate enough resource so that you can build these buildings, and generate enough science so that you can invent the cards in the first place, and then also earn culture, which is victory points. Moving on to 2007, lots of good choices for this year, including Race for the Galaxy, Agricola, and 1960, The Making of the President, one of my favorites. But for this year, I gotta go with Galaxy Trucker. We have a 1-2 punch with my favorite designer, Vlaada Chvátil. I'm sorry if I'm, I'm sorry that I'm absolutely butchering your name. Galaxy Trucker is a game that I fell in love with very early on in my sort of entry into this hobby. It's just so much fun. I love tile laying games, and this does it in such a clever way, adding a real-time element, which this is almost the only real-time game that I ever play or even like. But because everyone's doing it at the same time and there's really no time limit, you're only limited by the other players and how fast they're going. So you're just trying to keep up with them as you're grabbing these tiles and building your spaceship out. But it's best if everyone is rushing and trying to go as fast as possible. This is a game about being terrible. You're building a terrible ship, and then you're going to send it out into space, and it's going to encounter all of these things that are going to knock pieces off of it and cause your crew to get abducted. And best case scenario, you're going to make it back home with 1 or 2 bits of cargo, barely squeeze out a little bit of money. If you have the right group and you go in with the right mentality, it's so much fun to just see asteroids knocking off half of your ship and just all the crazy things that can happen in this game. On to 2008, and we have a really difficult choice here. In fact, it's going to be difficult choices from here on out. The runner-up is going to be Cosmic Encounter. Incredibly fun and chaotic strategy game of insane alien powers and negotiation. Really great game with 5 or 6 players, but I'm going to have to go with Dominion. Dominion introduced the world to deck building, where you start with a really weak, crappy deck, and you use that to purchase new cards that eventually get shuffled into your deck, making you stronger and stronger as you go along. Deck building is everywhere now, but Dominion is special in that it's just such pure deck building. And it plays just like a classic card game. You're just playing cards out, getting cards. Turns are super fast. Great with 2 or 3 players. And with the 14 expansions, or however many there are so many different cards and combinations that it's really infinite replayability. 2009 is pretty painful because the runner-up is Macau, one of my favorite games of all time. It was reprinted as Amsterdam. This is a great medium-weight Euro game from Stefan Feld. The reprint added a pretty mediocre solo mode, which is one of the reasons why my choice is At the Gates of Loyang. Loyang has a fabulous solo mode, one of my absolute favorites, and it also plays fantastic at 2. In this game, you're planting vegetables and then drafting customers that want certain combinations. You're also drafting cards that are market stalls that allow you to trade for different vegetables, and helper cards that have special abilities. You're combining all this together to get money, and then at the end of every round, you get to spend money to get victory points. A great Rosenberg farming game that doesn't involve worker placement, which is kind of a rarity. And I've done a full playthrough of this one, so go check that out. For 2010, the runner-up is Dominant Species. Incredibly mean, in-your-face game. Wild and crazy and chaotic. But my choice for the year is Troyes. Troyes is such an evergreen game for me. It is constantly hitting the table. It's actually not that complicated of a game, but it's just really quirky. It does things in a very unique way that you don't see in a lot of other games. Every player has a pool of dice that they roll, and then you use those dice to take actions. The dice come in 3 colors, and you kind of are coupling those together, adding up the pips, and then depending on the action, you have to divide by a certain amount, and that's the number of times that you can take that action. But the cool thing is, you can pay other players in order to steal their dice. And I really love how everyone has a secret agenda that's revealed at the end of the game, and then everyone gets to score it. So you're constantly trying to figure out what the other player is doing that might hint at what their agenda is. 2011 is the biggest tragedy yet because the runner-up is Castles of Burgundy. Oh, I love this game. The new reprint that just came out that added a fantastic solo mode. One of my absolute favorite 2-player Euro games. On each of your turns, you roll 2 dice, and then you use those dice to take actions, which involve grabbing tiles and then doing some tile laying. Classic game, but I'm afraid I'm gonna have to go with Mage Knight. This is just an epic solo efficiency puzzle. You're using cards in order to take actions, moving and exploring a map, recruiting units, battling monsters, and every card can be upgraded using mana, as well as used in multiple different ways. So the puzzle of trying to figure out how you can manipulate your cards just so to do what you need to do is delicious. Now, 2012 is a much easier decision than 2011. We'll give the honorable mention to Ginkgopolis, a fantastic tile-laying city-building game. But of course, the nod has to go to Robinson Crusoe. I talk about this co-op survival game all the time. It's my favorite solo game. It's a game system with a bunch of different scenarios that you can play as one-shots. It has an incredible event system that creates all of this emergent storytelling. And you have this brilliant system of push your luck worker placement. And I think my favorite thing is that there are so many choices in the game with actual consequences that trigger later in the game, which really gives the story a consistency that's rarely felt in other strategic board games. This is one of the few games I consider a masterpiece, so I had to have it. 2013 is a real flip of the coin, but I think my honorable mention is going to be Concordia. This is a fantastic Euro game where you're using cards to take actions, and then it's one of those games where you have to play a card in order to pick up your action cards that you've already played. Great system, but my pick is going to be Viticulture. In 2013, Viticulture was only okay, but it got a lot better as it went along, especially with the introduction of the Tuscany expansion. This is a medium weight worker placement game about making wine. You get to plant grapes, harvest them, age your wine in cellars, and then sell it to customers for money and victory points. And you're racing to like 25 points or something. The card play in this game is really fun because you're constantly getting these helper cards that have special abilities on them that you can play. And the game really is simple enough that you can teach it to almost anybody. Definitely one of my favorite worker placement games. For 2014, my honorable mention is La Granja. This is another great medium weight Euro game that kind of takes a kitchen sink approach. It's got a little bit of everything. Dice drafting, contract fulfillment, area control, but mostly it's known for having extremely multi-use cards. But I had to go with one of my all-time favorites, Kanban. Kanban and the reprint Kanban EV remains my favorite Vital Lacerda game and one of my favorite heavy Euro games, mostly because I adore this theme, and I think this really tight and confrontational worker placement system is just amazing. I won't get all into it now. Please watch my playthrough if you want to learn about all the nitty-gritty there, but yeah, I just love the timing involved of jockeying for position, trying to get into the apartment that you need to get into to, get that design tile or that car part. And the fact that you have your boss, Sandra, also jockeying for position, judging you. The fact that you score points by going to meetings and bragging about your accomplishments. It all works so well. I'm always having a blast, even as it's breaking my brain. Speaking of great Vital Lacerda Euro games, in 2015 the runner-up is The Gallerist. Great game about running a gallery, uses the wonderful bumping mechanism of worker placement. But my choice for 2015 is Grand Austria Hotel, one of my favorite two-player games. This has some of the best dice drafting of any game that I've ever played. At the beginning of the round, you roll a ton of dice, and then you organize them by their value. And each number 1 through 6 represents a different action that you can take. And the number of dice there is the power of that action. So if there are 3 threes, let's say, I would get to take that, whatever the 3 action is, but I get to do it 3 times because there's 3 dice there. And the theme is really cool because you're drafting these customers. They're going to go into your restaurant. They're going to sit there at that table taking a spot until you feed them the stuff that they want. And then you get to put them into one of your hotel rooms that you have prepared for them. Just an absolute favorite of mine. Oh man, 2016. This is by far the most difficult choice so far. Arkham Horror, the card game, is not even my runner-up. That's how difficult this year is. Runner-up has got to be A Feast for Odin. This game is in my top 10 of all time. Absolutely love this worker placement game where you have just dozens of different spots that you can go, and you're doing this really satisfying tile laying with these polyomino pieces. But my pick has to go to Great Western Trail. This is a deck building game of sorts. There's way more going on than that, but you're using deck building in order to tune your hand of cards as you're going down this path, which is like basically a giant rondelle. Because when you get to the end of the path, you're going to turn in your hand of cards, and you want to have as many different cows and as many high-valued cows in your hand when you get to the end of the path. And as you go along, you're going to decide how many spaces to move and where to stop. But you're also going to be building new buildings out there on the path, moving your train tile, getting new helpers that are going to make you more powerful, all sorts of stuff. Such an incredibly fun game at 2 and 3 players. And the solo mode is actually really good as well. So you thought 2016 was pretty amazing. 2017 just said, hold my beer, because listen to these games that aren't even my runner-up. Lisboa, Anachrony, Too Many Bones, Gaia Project, Spirit Island, maybe you've heard of it. Wow. And my runner-up is one of my favorite games of all time, This War of Mine. Please go check out the playthrough for this one. I talk about it a lot. This is one of the most harrowing survival games around. Incredible stories, just an incredible experience. But the game I picked has to be Gloomhaven. I'm a huge fan of this system, along with Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, and I haven't played the new one, Frosthaven, yet, but I'm sure I'm going to love that as well. I just love this combination of traditional dungeon crawling with this card play, this hand management system. You're going to play 2 cards. Each card has a top and a bottom, and you're going to pick the top ability on one card and the bottom ability on another. And you're going to use that to move around and to perform attacks against different creatures as you're dungeon crawling, collecting loot and whatnot. And then these cards kind of double as your stamina. So you have to be careful not to run through your cards too quickly. And some of the cards, the abilities are so powerful that you immediately discard the card and don't get it back if you use that ability. So you have to use those at the right time. There's a lot of great occasions for really cooperative play. Just so much good stuff in this huge epic campaign where you get to level up your character and do all that fun stuff. So Gloomhaven comes out on top of an incredibly strong year. So here we go, 2018 comes along. Can't live up to 2017, what year could? But there's still quite a few games here that I love, and unfortunately the runner-up's gotta be Nemesis. What a great thematic survival game, basically Alien, the movie, the board game. Really great tense stuff there where you're moving around the spaceship and making noise and trying to avoid these aliens. But my pick for 2018 has to be Obsession. This is a really clever game where you are putting on these activities that require you to sort of manage your workforce as well as play the appropriate guest cards from your hand. So you're kind of juggling these multiple resources. And when you can successfully put on one of these activities, you're going to get reputation for your family and maybe some money so that you can go and buy additional tiles, upgrading your estate and allowing you to put on different, even better events. And as you kind of use your workers, they have a little bit of a cooldown. And so there's some timing there. Really great puzzly decisions and a wonderful solo mode. I love this one solo. This is a game that I think is going to be an evergreen in my collection. For 2019, there's a lot of great picks, including Paladins of the Lost Kingdom, Maracaibo, and Marvel Champions. But I'm going to jump straight into my pick, and that's PAX Premier 2nd Edition. It's really hard to explain just how unique this game feels to play. You're going to be purchasing cards from a central market in a very tight, closed economy. You build up a small tableau with these cards, and they allow you to take all sorts of different actions, like gaining money, adding pieces to the map, controlling territories. Ultimately, you're trying to gain the most favor with one of the 3 superpowers, and then help to push them to dominance. The thing is, you have so few actions and very limited power. So it's more about subtly positioning yourself at just the right time. Games can play out very differently and just have a very different feel from one another. It's hard to explain. You really have to experience it to understand because there's really just nothing else like it. 2020 is another powerhouse with, unfortunately, The Loop being left on the cutting room floor. The runner-up is going to be Dune Imperium, a fantastic hybrid of deck building and worker placement set in the Dune universe. But my pick is going to be another deck building worker placement game, The Lost Ruins of Arnak. When you add the Leaders expansion to this, it blossoms into just a wonderful medium to medium heavy Euro game with an exploration feel, where you're playing cards either for, a little action on the card or in order to place your worker out onto the board, either getting some basic resources or going out and exploring uncovering new worker placement spots, each one protected by these guardians, these fantastical creatures that you have to defeat, or else you'll get these junk fear cards into your deck. You're using the resources to get new cards and artifacts and to move up these, research tracks. I love this at 2 or 3, and the solo mode is one of my favorites. There's a great app that simplifies it. There's solo campaigns, lots of variability and replayability. I don't know, I just love this one so much, and I'm so excited to try the newest expansion. I've been flip-flopping on my 2021 pick, just going back and forth, back and forth. I cannot decide. I think I'm going to go honorable mention Final Girl. This is a thematic solo-only experience where you use action cards and dice rolling in order to play out some sort of classic horror film or horror scenario. But for my pick, I'm going to go with Sleeping Gods. I'm a sucker for exploration and just being able to wander around this open world and have adventures and come across quests and puzzles and just have battles with exotic creatures. It's so much fun. I never get tired of it, and I love the world and the stories that you encounter in Sleeping Gods. It's just an amazing universe, beautifully illustrated, absolutely sucks me in every time. There's just an endless amount of game to explore here. For 2022, if you've watched my top 10 solo games of the year list, then you know what to expect here. The runner-up's going to be Ark Nova, a wonderful sort of tableau building, tile laying game about building a zoo. But the game I have to have is Frostpunk. This game is a massive achievement, but it's not going to be for everyone because it is also a massive game. Tons of components, huge table presence, takes a long time to set up and to play. It's brutally difficult, but it takes a lot of inspiration from all the fantastic survival board games that I've mentioned already, in particular Robinson Crusoe and This War of Mine. It adds a city building aspect as you're trying to house and care for a population in the middle of a wintry apocalypse, centered around this massive generator that is keeping you warm and alive. Easily one of the best video game adaptations to a board game that I've ever played, and joins the ranks of the best survival games. Just an incredible achievement. And finally, we get to 2023, and for that, you're going to need to watch my top 10 of the year video, which is coming soon. I still have a few more games to play, but there we go. Those are the games that I would choose if I could only keep one game from each year. I would absolutely love to hear what you think in the comments below. What are some games that I left off that you would include? And hey, if you like the video, click the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.